Hello there, Alyssa.
Hello there, Brian.
All right, joining me behind the table, it is Alyssa Farah Griffin. Right before we got started here, you and I were just talking about this. This was not planned, but we're talking about this feud that is developing between Peter Navarro and Elon Musk. And I believe the words you used were injected into my veins. Tell me how you're feeling and what's going on.
Okay, so I know Peter Navarro well.
Right.
I worked with him in the White House. And to be honest, I always got a kick out of him and felt like, and I was nice to him because a lot of people, he wasn't always the most widely liked person in the West Wing. I'll put it that way. And
you said on the show the other day he was kind of shoved to the side.
Well, yeah, his office was over in the EOB, which if you're a senior advisor, that's kind of a snub. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the other senior economic advisors would actively try to keep him out of meetings. So they would try to make him not see the president's schedule that day so that he couldn't show up and give him bad ideas. And to anyone on the right who would be like, that's not serving the president, I would argue it's serving the president to make sure that half-baked ideas don't get in front of him. That's actually a job.
If he's suggestible.
But, exactly. But long story short, Navarro, no fan of mine anymore since I'm a Trump critic. And I was reminded that he came after me, Cassidy Hutchinson, and Sarah Matthews and called us pimp ladies and wrote this Twitter screed about us. And I found the article because it got written up. But this guy he's got some very backward views. His economic policies would have made sense maybe 100 years ago. And in this war, I'm Team Elon, which is rare for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not your usual position.
So Elon's just been tweeting at him, calling him a moron, dumber than a bag of bricks. And I'm fascinated by it. But I think what I'm curious is, what did Elon think Trump meant when he was campaigning saying he was going to put massive tariffs on foreign imports? I mean, Elon was his biggest supporter. He ran saying he was going to do exactly what he's doing now. And then now he's taken out on Peter Navarro. And I'm like, your beef seems like it's with Donald Trump.
Well, he hasn't spoken outright against Trump yet. And, there's all these talks that he's on the way out and it's been announced already. Their response to that is, it's always been planned. It was a short-term thing. But do you think right now Elon is talking to Donald Trump and saying, hey, you have to reverse course? Or what do you think?
I'm certain because as the wealthiest man on the planet, that means he's also lost the most money of anyone with the market crash. But I would imagine for Tesla or SpaceX or any of his U.S.-based companies, these tariffs will be devastating. He does not manufacture all of those parts needed for them, his cars or his rockets here.
Sure. So
I'm certain that he's trying to get in the president's ear to change his mind. I just don't know if he breaks through. This is one where I can't call if I think Trump's going to change course or if he's simply going to double down. And usually I thought the one thing that really motivated him was the stock market. In the first term, he'd always have the ticker up as he walked into the Oval and paid attention to how the market would close every day. So I'm like, is he going to see how shaky it's been and that make him reverse course? But another theory I've heard is now that he's in his second term and doesn't have to run for re-election again, he just doesn't care anymore. And he's willing to try what he's always wanted to do. And that could spell real economic devastation for basically every American.
Wow.
But I'll say this. As much loyalty as Trump may have to Elon Musk, he did help him win the election. He was the single biggest donor. Peter Navarro's always going to win on loyalty. This man went to jail for Donald Trump. Yeah. Don't forget, he defied a congressional subpoena and still refused to testify about the events around January 6th and spent 6 months in prison on behalf of Trump. So I think that there's a deep well of loyalty between Peter and the president.
It'll be interesting. All right. I bet he has a West Wing office now, Peter Navarro.
I know. I was going to say he's definitely gotten moved into the building.
All right. Well, we had Senator Cory Booker on the show yesterday. This was your first time meeting him?
It was. I was surprised, but I couldn't think of if I'd ever been in a Senate meeting he'd been in or met him, and I don't believe I have.
What did you think of him? I always find him incredibly charming in person, and I thought he did great on the show. What was your takeaway?
Totally agree. I actually found him quite captivating. I think that he, because I'm always analyzing politicians when they come on to see who's on talking points, who feels overly rehearsed, who feels authentic, who feels inauthentic. And we've had all of those things. And with him, he felt deeply authentic. He conveys compassion. And what I liked is I do not like, I understand people are really mad at Republicans and Trump, and they have every right to be. I don't like the name calling, the divisive, they're the bad guys, we're the good guys on everything. He made it a point to talk about bringing around Republicans and trying to have this sort of more unifying language that I strongly believe needs to come back into our politics.
Right.
Just because other people go low, just because Donald Trump goes low, it doesn't mean everyone else should go even lower or go just as low.
He talked more about that on the podcast afterwards yesterday, too.
Yeah, there's almost like a preacher quality to how he speaks, but I think he's great. I do wish though that he would consider challenging Chuck Schumer. I think I like his message, and he's right that real change in the country comes from people, not politicians. But at the same time, like, you've got to vote in the Senate, like, you're an elected senator, you should also do everything you can if you think you could have influence. And I think he showed that he could be somebody who's willing to use the rule book as it exists in the Senate and try to make change. So
there's been a lot of noise on the right about his 25-hour speech and basically saying it was a stunt that was meaningless. How do you feel about it?
Did they say that when Ted Cruz did it?
I'm curious. Yeah. Well, I'm curious, as a Republican, what's your takeaway when you saw that? Did you think it was...
Okay, so morning of the God's Honest Truth, I went into, before he broke the record and it had just started, I was like, oh, what a snooze. Oh my gosh, who watches C-SPAN? It's not even blocking a real bill. This is a stunt. And then watching him go to like the 25th hour and to surpass Strom Thurmond's record and the significance of that and the history of it, and the fact that he was talking about actual policies, not reading the phone book or doing, I think...
stunty stuff, yeah.
Ted Cruz read, like, Dr. Seuss books at one point. I was like, you got to respect you just have to respect the endurance that takes, simply. And that it clearly was meaningful to him, and he went in with the intention of beating Strom Thurmond's record. So I actually really totally respected it on the other side of it. At first, my thought was like, this isn't going to break through. Nobody watches the Senate floor. But when you do it for 25 plus hours, don't eat anything, don't drink anything, don't take a bathroom break, don't take a nap, that's impressive.
I thought so too. We have a question here from Landon in North Carolina for you. With it seeming like 2028 is already in the conversation, which is crazy but accurate. Who do you see taking on the mantle of MAGA? Do you think his cabinet will end up being the Apprentice primary edition, with all of them using their elevated roles for a primary run? And this is me adding to the question. Do you think he will acknowledge that he's not going to try for a third term with enough time to spare for that to happen? I mean, that's the crazy thing.
That is the crazy thing. So a lot of things. It is crazy that there's already talk of like what comes next, but I mean, constitutionally, he cannot run for president again. I expect that he is going to keep dangling this third term thing for a couple of reasons. Donald Trump is terrified of looking like a lame duck. He realizes that come the midterms, he effectively is. There'll very likely be a change in the balance of power. His ability to get his agenda through will be diminished, and people will be looking to the future. If Democrats are smart, they're going to run some, exciting next generation candidate, and then the focus is going to be on who is it if not Trump. And I could see him really dangling this notion that he's still there to kind of loyalty test people who would run.
Which will hurt people that want to run. If you're J.D. Vance and you're trying to get your campaign going and you're stifled by...
you can't come out and say it. You can't come out and launch your campaign if he's saying that. But a lot is also just going to depend, like, does he stick to these tariffs, and are we in a massive recession? Is the economy in shambles? If that's the case, I think people are going to look away from MAGA, and they're going to be like, we need a market-based, Republican who's more in the model of a Reagan, Romney, Paul Ryan. And in that case, that kind of opens it. I mean, that's the best case scenario in my viewpoint. I think J.D. Vance thinks it's him. I think polls right now say it's him. I don't think it will be. Right. I also think that Trump is a singular figure in politics, and the loyalty around him, he could, shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and his base would still be with him. No one else in my political lifetime has had that, nor do I expect that they will. So even if it ends up being someone like J.D. Vance or someone from his cabinet, they're not going to command the same unflinching loyalty, respect, and unwillingness to challenge him that Trump does.
I think what we did see kind of with the Ron DeSantis moment was that Trump hanging around, maybe running, maybe not, really took a chunk out of him. I think that'll happen to pretty much anybody.
Yeah, and it's also like the politics is a very delicate dance where like timing matters a lot.
It's unbelievable. That's one thing I've learned from, because I never really spent much time paying attention to politics in the granular way, but the timing and the momentum and that moment that comes for a second where it seems like, of course it's going to go this way. Fades so fast.
So quickly. And I think DeSantis came off of looking like the only bright light for Republicans after the midterms. But I mean, he really quickly
Fizzled.
Yeah. And it didn't help that Trump was calling him putting fingers among other things.
Yeah.
But there's always, like, every cycle, there's a few, like, would-be stars that don't quite get there.
Yeah.
And by the way, like, I think our primaries are way too long. No country does it the way we do. Like, shrink them, make an election, season 6 months. But it'll be interesting to see both on the left and the right who ends up emerging and if they run in the lane of the previous election.
Yeah, I'm curious too. All right, so John Stamos, this is another hot topic from the cutting room floor.
Oh, yes.
He's facing backlash for attending an event at Mar-a-Lago called the Palm Beach Ray of Hope Gala. And it's a worthy cause. It's an evening dedicated to honoring and uplifting frontline heroes. But there are many who feel like you don't go to Mar-a-Lago if you're not a full-out MAGA Trump supporter. It's unclear what his politics are. I think he's voted Democrat in the past, but no one knows what he did in the last election for certain. He responded to backlash by saying supporting frontline heroes isn't political. What do you think of this?
I think the backlash is overblown. I get it. It's a Trump-owned venue, and so people are saying you're lining his pockets by supporting a charity there. But at the end of the day, it is for charity. And I mean, Mar-a-Lago kind of has become the centerpiece of Palm Beach. I mean, I suppose you could have said I'll MC it if you do it somewhere else. But I think we're way too quick in the Trump era to like want to go after any public figure who shows even the slightest bit of affiliation with Trump without like giving them some level of the benefit of the doubt. He also, I believe, tweeted out or put out a statement saying you could give to like this democracy fund, which seems like a pretty tacit acknowledgement that he's not necessarily a pro-Trumper. And it was like the same thing. Bill Maher went to the White House and had lunch with him, and we haven't gotten a readout yet because he hasn't been back on air. But people were criticizing him for it. I'm like, Bill Maher's been doing this for 30 plus years. He's never taken his foot off the pedal on anyone he's critical of. If you really think he's going to get worked over by Trump in one lunch and therefore shouldn't sit down with him, you're crazy. And on the flip side, it's if someone like Bill Maher, who's very passionate about certain policies, goes and gives a persuasive case to the president of the United States on why he thinks he should reverse or reconsider certain policies, that's a good thing. Like, I'll never get the, like, he's in power, he has an oversized influence in all of our lives, and by the way, no one should ever try to influence what he's doing.
Right.
That's not
the
not
idea
a way
that you're platforming the president of the United States is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with
if
you on
only
that.
I don't platform him, he'll go away.
All right, not to put you on the spot, but is there any cause you could see yourself going to Mar-a-Lago to support at this point?
Well, yes, actually. Oh, not like this. Like, I wouldn't go MC an event there. No, but I've said before, like, if there was something I was deeply passionate about or scared about that was happening, and I thought that I could get a meeting with Donald Trump to address it, I would do it without even a second guess.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't think he would give me an audience, but I absolutely would.
All right. Let's change.
It'd be so awkward, though.
So awkward.
like, how do you look at someone you worked for who you've said some very critical things about? And then, like, and by the way, I hope you'll consider this.
Yeah, well, that happens.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the White Lotus. Yes. The finale was on Sunday. Everyone's talking about it in our office and throughout the country. What were your big takeaways?
Excellent season, and I was a little skeptical. I felt like it started slower than season 2. Season 2 was such perfection that I think it was a high bar. But Mike White does not miss. It had kind of everything it needed. A few moments. I'll be careful because I don't want to give.
All right. So spoiler alert: if you have not seen White Lotus and
tune out,
you don't want to know what happened, we're going to talk now.
Yes.
And we've already got your clicks, so that's fine.
I thought that his shows tend to have no heroes, and I think the closest thing to like the redeemable character is the girlfriend of Walter Goggins in this, who's throughout just trying to like be his redemption and keep him away from his revenge arc. And so the fact that she also died in this shootout was like gutting, but it also kind of shows like there's no winners in these scenarios, which I thought was powerful. Something I caught that I didn't see a lot of people mention, but Natasha, who plays the massage therapist from the first season, when her character ends up getting the money, And then she leaves, and she leaves behind the guy that she was seeing at the resort and was going to start a business with, and she just kind of waves. It was a callback to in the first season how Tanya was going to go into business with her and then hung her out to dry and left her behind. So it shows even like a very good character.
Multi-season character arc.
Yeah, who's supposed to be one of the good guys ends up being corrupted. I thought was very interesting. What do you think?
I was interested in what the creator of the show has been saying, because he's getting the criticism that it was moving slow, which is something I heard from a lot of people. And he's kind of like, this is the world I'm creating. This is the ride we're going on. Something's going to happen. Relax. It reminded me because we were talking about The Sopranos backstage the other day. And that was the same thing with that show. There'd be years where nothing's happening. Nobody's been killed yet.
And
then everything comes together and it's artwork. And I think you have to look at these things in big picture and look back a year later to how you felt about stuff.
And there wasn't a single episode this season that didn't give something. It just wasn't necessarily, you could tell it was building toward. Also even the daughter who wanted to go to the monastery and the whole thing, the fact that she was like, oh no, actually I'm bougie and I need my organic foods. Like I loved that. I'm like,
relatable.
I was like, A, so relatable, and B, again, there's no heroes in this show.
None. All right, one more from the cutting room floor here. There was a topic on the list today about giving your partner the silent treatment. Some people call this noisy silence, which means that you try in an obvious way to let people know that they're being ignored. Have you ever tried that with Justin?
Yeah, well, okay, I'm not passive aggressive with my husband. I'm just aggressive. So I'm like, I choose violence. No, I, for some reason, with Justin, I can't let things linger. I have to address it then. So I'm way more likely to just head on, be like, you did this, it really bothered me, and we're like not leaving this room until we talk it through.
Oh, really?
I also refuse to go to bed angry. So if we have to stay up late fighting about something, we will. I just couldn't be passive aggressive with someone who lives in my own home, because then I'm taking away from my energy by trying to give them negative energy.
Right.
And he's also the same. We're both communicators by nature, so he'll know, and then he would just like berate me until I told him what was wrong.
I try the silent treatment thing. I'm not going to lie.
Does it work?
Well, so the problem is it'll work to a point where like I can get my wife to make like an effort, a small movement. Never, I mean, we've been married 20 years. She's never apologized for anything. It's never happened. But like she'll make like she'll put her arm around me or something.
Yeah.
And if I'm cold to that, then now she's mad and it's over. I missed my chance.
I know.
So it's a very small window, and I don't really.
I so greatly admire women like your wife who have that power in their relationship.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law is the same way. Like, she holds the cards, and my brother-in-law knows it. I do. I think Justin and I are very equal. But I definitely couldn't get I couldn't get away with that.
I've misplayed my hand somewhere in the early years of my marriage. So
there's probably something psychological about it.
I think so. But it's a little brutal. Yeah, no. So I try the silent treatment, but also if you're like planning anger, then you're not really angry. I feel like
agreed. That's a little bit. It's a little more petty. Like I want to irritate this person, but like when you're truly angry, I'm much more reactive.
Yeah, like today, my wife sent me a text. We're going on vacation next week, and there's some sandals that she wants that won't be delivered in time for our trip. She wants me to
go pick them
up. They're about 20 minutes from here. And she said, go do that. Now, meanwhile, I had like a prescription at CVS down the street from our house that I said, hey, I really need this today. And she's too busy. So, I mean, this is the thing.
Oh, my goodness.
That being said, I'm probably walking 20 minutes to get the sandals. So
I've been, well, I think it might be because I'm going through IVF. My husband's like on eggshells with me and will do anything. Like he just does random acts of kindness for me out of the blue.
That's lovely.
No, but he never used to do this. Like it would never occur to him like, oh, like put a toilet paper roll back on or like take out the trash without like me asking. And suddenly like my dry cleaning appears, like the fridge is stocked.
Look at that.
It's gold. When I eventually do get pregnant, I'm gonna lean so hard into the fact that I'm pregnant.
I have to say, like once you have kids, it does change the balance a little bit, and then really the power does go towards mom, especially if she's taking care of the lion's share of the hard work with the children, which my wife does. Then it's kind of hard to get mad at her for anything. I will say, the best advice I was ever given about marriage, and I have trouble adhering to this, but never have a fight over something you're just going to end up doing anyway.
that's great advice.
If you're at the end of the day, you're
Right.
just going to acquiesce and you're just going to
Right.
do it anyway. If I'm going to take the garbage out anyway,
Yeah.
why complain about it? Why have the fight about it and not get any of the goodwill from doing it in the first
You're
place?
gonna walk 20 minutes to
Exactly.
pick up the sandals.
I've
just
already
get the
complained about the
sandals.
sandals.
Yeah.
So I should have just done it.
I think that, and I do strongly believe in not going to bed angry. It's based on it. There's a Bible verse in Ecclesiastes to not let the sun set on your anger, and I think it's very wise because you don't want to start a whole new day. Well, you don't want to go to bed fuming and then start a new day without having resolved it.
Right. I rarely wake up angry. I will say that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I also half the time will forget about it if enough time
So does my wife,
passes.
which is great. That's very helpful. All right. There was another hot topic about wedding gifts. And some people think that the best present you can give is to leave the reception without saying goodbye to the bride and groom. That's just, I'd like cash personally, but tell me.
Okay, this is different than how I understood it.
Okay.
You can't do that in lieu of a wedding gift.
Yeah.
I feel extremely strongly you always give a wedding gift.
Yes.
My husband literally can name people who were at our wedding that didn't give wedding gifts.
He's vindictive. I
and
like
he,
that.
Yeah, and he like remembers it. Like we're almost coming up on 5 years. So you have to give a gift. That is a fact.
Are you a registry person or are you?
I'm a registry person. I think cash is very New York. I've never even really heard.
Oh my
of
gosh,
doing...
it's maybe it's Italian, maybe it's New York.
I
but
actually
it's,
have heard it's Italian though too.
No, it's a big deal.
There is a grace period. I think you get about 6 months after the wedding to buy the gift. You don't have you don't need to bring it to. No one does that anymore.
No, you ship it.
You ship it. But I do support an Irish goodbye. I think whether it's a birthday, a wedding, if people are partying and having fun, you're kind of yucking their yum by coming over and being like, okay, my night's over. We're bored. We're going home. Like, not that you would say that,
Right.
but it sort of implies that like you've had enough.
So you don't feel it's rude if you're looking for somebody and they're just gone?
If you're in the bridal party, you've got to stay the whole time. If you're like a very close friend or family, I think you know when you have to stay till the very end. Otherwise, I think no, they're not going to notice.
I like the receiving line. I like people coming up to me and saying like,
But do you want to be on the dance floor? You want someone interrupting to say like, I'm going home?
No, probably not. All right. That's a good point. All right. Well, that's all the time we have today, Alyssa. Thank you for joining me.
Of course.
Tomorrow, I'll be back with Sarah Haynes, and we will see you then.